Hello everyone, my name is Jacob Beck. I recently attended the 2019 Turning Point USA Student Action Summit. It was truly a remarkable experience. I encourage any young conservative out there that can attend next year to make sure and attend. It's truly an eye-opening experience. It was so refreshing for once to be surrounded by like-minded people my age. And don't get me wrong, I'm 19 years old and I'm a conservative, so yeah, a vast majority of my peers disagree with me politically. I'm actually thankful for it, however. I'm a strong believer that the more your views are questioned and contested, the stronger they become, because you're forced to defend them and back them up with actual substance. Well, unless you're on the left end of the spectrum, in which case you basically have a get-out-of-jail-free card, but that's neither here nor there. However, occasionally it is nice to be around people that share your views, especially as a conservative. It gives you hope and reminds you that there are other people out there that do agree with you. In fact, there's a lot of people who do. They just don't tend to get the same media coverage as, let's say, the Greta Thunbergs of the world. While at the summit, my faith in this country was rejuvenated. To see hundreds of young people coming together on Christmas break to speak about politics and how we're going to fix this country. While there, I realized something very important. The current generation is going to be the generation that will decide the fate of this country, and we have to act now. I asked myself, what's the best way to do my part and make a difference in the bigger picture? We've all seen the protest the left continues to hold, the complete slandering of the opposition even when there's nothing more than a theory to back up their claims which they deem are expert opinions. But whatever you call it, it's equally as detestable and ridiculous. So what we're going to be doing is looking at the facts, breaking down the breaking news, and utilizing truth, because you can't run from the truth. So where better to start than the one thing that's all over the news and we're all completely sick of hearing about, the impeachment. Now, as much as I would like to assume that everyone watching this already understands how the impeachment process works, I know there will be somebody out there that doesn't, which is completely fine. It's important that we all learn this at some point, so where better than here? So let's start with the impeachment process, then break down why Congress should be the ones charged with obstructing Congress. The way this process starts is in the House of Representatives, which has 435 members, currently a Democratic majority, 235 to 198. To start, the House Judiciary Committee has to decide whether or not to impeach. At that point, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, aka Jerry Nadler of New York, take a wild guess which end of the political fence he falls on. Regardless, the chairman will proceed to propose a resolution and begin a formal inquiry regarding the impeachment, which means absolutely nothing. Basically, the group will get together and talk about the issues with or without evidence and decide whether or not to proceed. After the first inquiry, they then send a second resolution comprised of one or more articles of impeachment to the full House. Now, this is supposed to explain the justification for the impeachment to proceed. The House then debates the articles, and should any of them be passed, the president will be impeached once those articles are sent to the Senate, and that's the catch. And here's where most of the confusion comes into play. The president will remain in office until a trial is held by the Senate. Now, what's the issue? Well, let's make it easy and go in order of steps of impeachment and break down the absolute failures of the Congress at each step of the way. First, the Judiciary Committee has to decide to impeach. At that point, the problems have already begun. The way this is supposed to function is so that the full House doesn't have to take the time and have hearings on cases that have absolutely no substantiation. However, the Democrats hold a 24-17 majority in the Judiciary Committee, so they approved the case for the first formal inquiry. This was then later justified by the articles of impeachment. The senior leaders of the House in the Judiciary Committee are supposed to act as a buffer to the rest of the House. Unfortunately, they did no such thing. The first issue with this process is that you don't technically have to have evidence to back up your claims, and you can technically still impeach without any evidence. This is where anyone on either side of the political spectrum should be raising an eyebrow. When it comes to impeachment, the reason for impeachment as dictated by the Constitution are extremely specific, as to prevent any party from outing a president for just disagreeing with him. Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution reads, and I quote, "The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors," end quote. You would think this is a clear enough outline for the impeachment justification, until you realize a couple of issues. First, instead of using any actual justification, the House voted Trump guilty of obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. I feel it necessary to clarify, there is no such thing as obstruction of Congress. They literally made it up in order to have something to convict him of in this hearing. It's never been used before. It will never be used again. It magically was created for this hearing and this hearing alone. During the Nixon impeachment hearing, a minimum of 6 out of the 17 opposing party members voted with the opposition on any article that was passed. Meaning, if the Democrats voted for a bill of impeachment, a minimum of 6 Republicans were also voting with them on that bill if it were to have been passed. Then, of course, Nixon stepped down knowing he was in fact guilty. The Clinton hearings were much of the same. In fact, 31 Democrats at the time voted with the Republicans in favor of impeachment. Now, moving on to the last week's hearing, something that has never happened before occurred. Not a single Republican voted in favor of impeachment, which isn't surprising considering the lack of evidence involved in the hearing, but the surprising part is that 3 Democrats also voted against the impeachment. We've never had a situation where an entire party votes against the articles of impeachment with assistance from the opposing party, yet the articles are still passed, helping add further justification to the farce this hearing actually is. Finally, the nail in the coffin for this hearing. The left should be asking, why has Trump not been removed if he's been impeached? Well, technically, he hasn't been impeached yet. Yes, the House voted in favor of the articles of impeachment. However, until those articles are sent to the Senate so they may hold a trial, the president has not technically been impeached. The ball currently is in the Democrats, specifically Nancy Pelosi's corner, and she hasn't made a move. If you're wondering why they wouldn't have sent it over already, it's really simple. They know it won't make it past the first day in the Senate. There is no evidence of Trump colluding with Ukraine, and the only evidence they thought they had was a transcript of a conversation between Trump and the president of Ukraine, which he had yet to release. However, in classic Trump fashion, he did what no one was expecting and released the transcript to the public that now proves him innocent. The bigger picture here is the next election. Now, disclaimer, this next bit of information is entirely speculation on my part, but I feel it's just so likely to come true, I still want to share it with you. However, take this next bit with a grain of salt. My theory is that Pelosi wanted to hold off on the impeachment. She wanted to keep it in conversation, but wait to hold the actual hearings until almost election time. Because no matter what side you're on politically, it is looking increasingly like Trump is going to win with a vast majority in the election as Bernie and Warren still battle it out to see who's going to be the Democratic candidate. So, Pelosi wanted to use this tool to drive people away from the R and towards the D on the ballot. However, against her wishes, her party held the hearings anyway, and now there is no possible way the Senate will remove him from office. And if the Senate fails to remove the president, it will almost certainly guarantee Trump's re-election because the Senate trial takes actual evidence and substantiation for all claims made, and it will prove the Democrats to have wildly abused their power in the House of Representatives. Thank you for tuning in. I encourage everyone listening to do their own homework on the matter and make a decision for themselves on why the current political state is the way it is. I encourage you to have a civil conversation with those around you concerning these topics, and remember, you can't run from the truth.